What is going on, everybody? It is David Palmer, the Leo King, and it is Tuesday, August 29th of 2017. Thanks so much for being here. Thank you for being a part of the Leo King Network here on Facebook. I truly appreciate it. And boy, oh boy, Mercury is retrograde. I'm sure that everybody's starting to feel it in a unique way. Every Mercury retrograde has its own little zing, has its own little feeling, has its own, vibration, I guess you could say, or frequency. And this Mercury retrograde has been, extra powerful just because, one, it's in the natural sign of where Mercury rules or co-rules, which is Virgo. So when Mercury's in its own home and it's retrograde, it's always more intense than usual. Solar eclipse in the middle of this Mercury retrograde between a lunar and solar eclipse that happened. So this Mercury retrograde is definitely not your, typical one. It's a much more intense one. This one's dealing a lot more with, perspectives of reality, criticism, things that we want to fix in our life in the positive aspects. There's a lot of aspects of when you look at this Mercury retrograde, like, wow, it's really shifting this. And boy, I thought life was going this way, and it's not. It's going that way. And you got to remember that this Mercury retrograde was an almost exact opposition to Neptune. So not a very simple one, not a very easy one, especially with confusing aspects. And, today I want to talk about how this Mercury retrograde is going to shift again and add to a whole nother element that is causing a lot of the intensity of what we're seeing in ourselves, in the world, and how it's about to shift to a whole nother section. Now, everybody, please give me a little bit of credit today. It is so hot here in California. We're having an overheat wave. It's in the hundreds here. So it's super hot here in my studio. I turned the AC off so it doesn't blow out my mic. I want to also say prayers and love to everybody out there in Texas and the Houston, Louisiana areas, everywhere surrounding those areas. That just looks extremely devastating. And, I couldn't imagine going through some of the things that they're going through out there. And I just want to send all my prayers and all my hopes for nothing but positive outcomes to the people out there in Houston, surrounding areas, even all the way into Louisiana. So my uncomfort in the heat, I will trade any day for anybody who is going through something like that. Now, I want to take a little look at the astrology to have people understand how I see things right now. One, I did the chart here for September 3rd, this weekend on Sunday, because by then, Mercury and Mars are going to be in conjunction. And what's interesting about this, and this even goes on September 2nd, but what's interesting about this conjunction is Mercury is retrograde on top of Mars at the exact degree of where the eclipse was. The solar eclipse on August 21st. And I want to actually now come back to the present and show you, some interesting aspects. So let's go to today. Let me actually move the hours back here for a second here. All right. Okay. So if we move forward, on Wednesday, Mercury is still retrograde in Virgo, okay? So a lot of this retrograde Mercury stuff still going on. That's really intense in Virgo, and some of the things I described about how it's in its natural home. It's, criticism, but it's also a lot of fixing of life, trying to get projects on the ground and get those situations going. There's a lot we can talk about there, and we can continue that talk in a little bit here. But this is what I find interesting. On the 31st, we have Mercury now officially in Leo. So it's going to get out of its natural home and come into Leo. Where, I'll be honest, I think Mercury will be a little bit happier retrograde in Leo than its own home sign, because Mercury would rather be in a place where things are together in Virgo than a little bit all scattered all over the place. Look at this, too. What I find interesting on Wednesday is the moon is conjunct Saturn in Sagittarius at the same time that Mercury is still retrograde and the sun in Virgo. These are extreme squares. Even though they're not exact, they're far off on the orb. you're really dealing with energy all over the place. And I think that over the last couple of days with belief structures, and especially when it comes to what reality is, there's been a lot of questions to that and a lot of controversy and a lot of it in your own world, especially about the things that, you want to change and your perspective of things and your own doubts or worries. This can bring up a lot of the, worrisome side of Virgo because it's Mercury retrograde and because of this Saturn aspect in Sagittarius, this moon in Sagittarius. The good news is Jupiter is supporting this aspect now with Saturn, which I think is kind of interesting. But I think that a lot of this is more of really finding this crazy understanding of our own lives and how to fix things and how to get these bigger pictures going. But it just seems very discombobulated is a good word, a little bit all over the place. Now, Mercury, of course, I think by Thursday, it gets a minor little break. I'm not going to give it a full break, just because here it is happening at the last degree of Leo, which is a very tense, regal, Regulus-ruled degree. And even though, yes, technically Regulus is in Virgo, Mercury's going to pass over this Wednesday into Thursday. And so I think that there's a lot about what are we going to give up in our life? What are we going to keep moving towards? And as we come into the weekend, here comes Mercury and Mars. There they are, starting to conjunct on Saturday. And then on Sunday. Now, this Mercury-Mars thing, it's happening at the eclipse degree. Now, we're going to go back to that in a second, but I want to just describe the most basic aspect of Mercury retrograde conjunct Mars. One, it can be very forceful. It can be malefic. Mercury can be malefic, and it can be on the benefic side, okay? Malefic meaning kind of harsh and intense and definitely not as positive, more negative, but Mercury can jump on the positive side as well. Mercury, it depends on what planet it's around, and it depends on its aspects and so forth. Now, this Mercury retrograde is going to be happening on Mars, so it definitely adds more of a malefic aspect. We've actually been experiencing Mercury and Mars in 2017, so more harsh tones, harsh conversations, things coming up in the nature of, harsh realities, accident prone. So be very careful this weekend about accidents, because definitely with Mars and Mercury retrograde, it's pushing the throttle way too fast, especially in Leo, hothead energy. I'm going to take it this way. And this is also Mars dealing with ego and identity. And Mercury is retrograding on top of this. So this is, I think, what we've been feeling in the universe. A lot of people wanting to say things the way that they see things, describe life the way that they want to, while in a stressful position of just trying to maintain everyday life that this Mercury retrograde and Sun in Virgo has been about, is like just trying to keep things in order, just trying to keep things together as the table is scattered all over the place with Jupiter in Libra trying to keep it all together. It just can't. It's just, it's had squares to Pluto. It's getting ready for its opposition to Uranus, which is another crazy, wild element to all this that's coming up here in September. So this Mercury retrograde has definitely been causing ruckus in different ways, in ways about how we deal with life, how we deal with reality, how we deal with our conversations, how we deal with our definition of ourselves, our ego. And now it's going to come into an accident-prone zone. So I'm just preparing people. This Mercury retrograde has been going in all different zones. It's definitely not just like electronics not working or something like that. This one is definitely much more on a deeper spiritual metaphysical level, just because of the fact that also the Mercury retrograde happened in between eclipses. So I would say that this one's definitely dealing up with extremely karmic situations, karmic relationships, karmic situations with people and circumstances that you weren't even predicting or even realizing that you would have to go through, and clearing a lot of those energies. I think that this Mercury retrograde is dealing with that as well, because at the same time that Mercury's been retrograde, Saturn turned direct, which is the man or the karma master. And so I think it's been interesting that ever since Saturn came direct late last week on Friday, it's been this, whoa, okay, now the Mercury retrograde is even like kind of tripling down, as it already was doubled down with the eclipses. So, and that it's at its home sign. So this Mercury retrograde has definitely been kind of just continues to, right when you think it's going to get weirder, oh my gosh, let's just add another thing on top of it to get weirder. And that's what's been going on. There's been just more of this weird and then more of that weird. And then, okay, it's going to get weirder here in this position now. And it's going to get a little bit funkier. And now granted, let's go back to the drawing board here. So now it's happening at the eclipse degree. So there is something this weekend that's extremely spiritual, that's extremely karmic, but more importantly, that is an understanding of what the eclipse has been about. It's no irony that Mars right away is slamming into the eclipse spot and Mercury is slamming retrograde back to that 28-degree spot. I mean, they're literally coming back to conjunct here. Now, Mercury wants to understand things, and it's coming from a different perspective. And how ironic, this is also in a very karmic zone because the North Node is right there. We've got Venus, which is in Leo. So this is going to be dealing a lot with our personal desires, our personal wants, where we're taking our life. And I think we've had a lot of things in Virgo that we've been covering. Well, it could be this. I want to create that. I want to make this. I want to make my edit here. I want to fix that. I want to adjust this. I want to adjust this in my life. Well, this is a Mercury retrograde that's finishing up here on September 5th, right? So it's interesting that right before Mercury goes stationary direct, it goes stationary on top of Mars. So what is Mars? It's more of this identification, direction, and in Leo, Mars is getting empowered at these last degrees. Mars is extremely malefic and extremely intense at the last degrees of a sign. Now, yes, it's happy that it's in a fire sign of Leo, but on top of all this, it is trining Uranus at 28 degrees exactly. So this is adding more of the element of surprise, more of the element of extremities, I would like to say, and things that just are going to flip themselves and turn on a dime that you weren't expecting. Now, my one word of caution is, of course, accidents and watching your tongue about what you say or how you come across things. My other positive aspect is this is uncovering and cutting off a major 2-year cycle that we have been waiting to cut off. What is that 2-year cycle? It is no irony at all that on August 6th and August 5th of 2015, we had Jupiter, Mercury, and Venus all at that 28-degree spot of Leo. We had Saturn finishing its direct motion when it went stationary direct. So how funny that this time the stationary direct happening is with Mercury at a retrograde where it was direct this time. And how ironic that there was this massive square here between Jupiter and Saturn on August 5th and August 6th of 2015. This is exactly the degree of the eclipse that happened on August 21st. So this is going back to where you were in your life and the fears and the difficult aspects of relighting your happiness in your heart and the difficulties that were at that spot on August 6th and August 5th of 2015. This is exactly going to be covering that spot now. Not only did the eclipse cover this, but this Mercury retrograde wants to understand what happened 2 years ago because Mercury has not gone retrograde in this spot since the 2-year transit of the Jupiter-Saturn square and the solar eclipse to cover this spot, all while Mars is ironic. 2 years ago, Mars was coming ready to come into that spot. It was at 28 Cancer back then, and Mars would later come into that spot a month later in September. But it's interesting that this is extremely deeply connected to a 2-year cycle here that is closing. And I believe what it is closing is extreme change inside of ourselves dealing with fear. I think that it is dealing with learning how to be positive in moments of extreme, difficult moments that are defined through things ending, dark fears, not being satisfied with life, dealing with Saturn and Scorpio is extremely ghoulistic elements. And I'm not trashing Saturn and Scorpio. I was born with that thing. So trust me, I know what a Saturn return in Scorpio is like. It is not easy and it is not fun at all. And it was definitely not easy with a square to Jupiter, Mercury, and Venus that happened on that August 6th. It was actually the 5th, 6th, and 7th. So, but that was a time, I think, of a major moment of a relight in our life. And I think that we have come to this moment this weekend to face, and with Uranus in trine, which, sure, it's retrograde, might not be direct, still Uranus, it's still there. It is trying to break us free of the chains that were at that 28-degree spot of Scorpio that dealt with fear, that dealt with dark aspects, that dealt with things that just were not easy for us to deal with in our life. And we can break through. And we can also, I think, learn to try and understand what this eclipse has been trying to do, which is to bring our heart back. And yes, it can bring out a very extreme, selfish element, but loving yourself is part of the key. And I know that it has been a very difficult struggle during this Mercury retrograde in Virgo to do that, with so many things that we feel we need to fix or make happen in order to make love happen, or criticisms or things that we need to make right in our own mind or belief structures, with all these things happening with Saturn and Sagittarius turning direct and all the things that I've tried to bring together here in this puzzle that have made it very difficult during this Mercury retrograde to have that breakthrough. But I feel like this quadruple down this weekend of Mercury retrograde is going to test your ability to break free of a 2-year cycle of knowing how to not let fear affect you for doing what you love, fear of questioning if what you're doing in your life is right or wrong. And I think a lot of that is with this Jupiter in Libra that's getting ready to oppose Uranus. And, you know, these are crazy and radical new insights into understanding more about our lives, more about who we are, more about what other people are, listening to a lot about what's going on in the universe. And we're all just trying to make sense of it, you know? And I think it's been a very difficult time. I think this eclipse has so much good in it, but I think that it's so hard for us to get there. And I've done the drawing. I did the drawing last week of needing to keep your eye on the ball of the positivity of what this eclipse is showing. But it's almost like there's a bunch of negative and dead weight that's hanging around. And I think a lot of that dead weight literally is and you know, I love Scorpio and there's a lot of positives to Scorpio, but a downside is it is the ruler of death. And you go back to August 4th or 5th, 6th, and 7th, and it was Saturn leaving an imprint as it squared Mercury last time here. It squared Jupiter here and left a mark that the solar eclipse just highlighted. The solar eclipse just brought this up, right? 28 degree. So if you have planets at 28 degrees anywhere, especially anywhere in your chart, it's going to affect that planet a lot. And affecting how you overcome that planet as well, or whatever. If it's been negative, if it's been positive, you know, rousting more of that positive energy. But, you know, overall, I feel that this weekend will be a major breakthrough for a lot of us when it comes to this harsh feelings that we've been having, this very negative outlook I think that we have kind of come into. Because if we actually just analyze Sagittarius and Virgo, the reason why they don't get along is it is Mercury and Jupiter in square, right? It's like the big vision versus the small little version of things. And so they're at a clash. And there's this major clash that has been going on. And this is also getting us prepared for a major full moon that is coming next week as Mercury is coming direct with Neptune exact. I mean, it's pretty much within 1 degree of this full moon. So, I mean, there are some major breakthroughs going to happen here in the week's time into next week with the full moon of breaking through a lot of confusion, breaking through 2 years of fear that actually got bubbled up again and brought up to the surface here in the last week with Saturn coming direct, the karma maker, and more importantly, the eclipse on top of these degrees that I have been trying to talk about this for years, actually, and preparing us for this this September, which in my opinion, September is in between worlds. It is Jupiter opposing Uranus for the last time, which is a weird outlook of worlds. But it also is in between Jupiter moving into Scorpio, which will happen in October. It is also interesting to have this full moon conjunct Neptune, which is another out there universe to understand and try and figure out as the sun is in Virgo. And we'll talk about that next week. But the best thing that I can say, and actually here's the picture from last week, is keep your eye, and I'll use a new color, keep your eye on your future and where you're going and the beauty of that. Individually take the things that you need to take and build a plan to get there, and you'll get there and rise above like a rainbow above. But all the shit and the crap that's all over the place right now, don't focus your attention too much there. It's just not worth it. It's a little bit like, I'm trying to think of a good example, which I want to show, because you know how I do this show. So, well, it's funny. If you go to Indiana Jones the Ride, it's the forbidden temple that you can't look into my eyes. But then there's the other aspect where the Nazi scum looks at the Holy Grail and how you're not supposed to look at it. It's too much of the brightness of light that you can't handle, and the dark can't handle it. There's a little bit of an aspect where it's kind of like, you know, in that movie, it was like, close your eyes, don't look at all the crazy crap going on. And I know that's a weird analogy, and I'm not telling you to just like be naive to the world or anything, but there's a lot of just chaos, going on that is distracting us from a very positive place, a very positive future. You know, I feel bad for the solar eclipse in Leo. I was actually talking to my good friend Christopher Witecki this weekend about this, who's another really great astrologer out there. And I was telling him, like, God, you know, and him and I are both Leo risings, and he has a Leo moon, and I'm a Leo sun. And so, you know, we're super Leo dudes, right? So we were like, man, we've been waiting our whole lives for the North Node and a solar eclipse to happen. And fuck, it happens with Mercury retrograde, Saturn retrograde, Uranus retrograde, Pluto retrograde, 5 planets retrograde, Chiron retrograde. Chiron actually even in a funky aspect to the solar eclipse. And, it almost was like the show that we all wanted to have happen for ourselves. We all started to believe that maybe it won't happen. And I think that's a little bit of a Saturn in Sagittarian lesson that we're all going through right now, is keeping our eye on the prize of the positive and closing our eye to the distractions and the negativity and the criticisms and the things that are just not aligning with that higher vibration in our life and so forth. And, you know, we all make mistakes. I've made some extreme mistakes in the last week with things that I've said, things that I've done in my life, and I will own that till the day that I die, in all aspects. So, I think that we all have to learn from our mistakes right now, but get back on that road to positivity and get back on a place to where we can we can fix the things in our life. And I think that Mercury retrograde in Virgo is about fixing things, even if they're things that we don't, they're circumstances that we don't want to fix. You know, Mercury retrograde in Virgo, using a more physical analogy, would be like, you know, gosh, I got to fix my car. It's been perfect and now it's broken. Or, God, the refrigerator is broken now and I just bought all this food in the fridge and I'm out of money. And where am I going to put this food? You know, it's situations in reality like, gosh, I've been misunderstood by the way that I have said things. How am I going to say this in a way that makes sense? And I think that Neptune is trying to teach this Mercury retrograde as it was opposing Mercury retrograde. Not exact, but pretty damn close. And it's trying to also teach the sun that's coming up in this full moon process for us all to find forgiveness, for us all to find that we all are always at, you know, faults in certain ways, and we can all learn from one each other. And we can all, at the end of the day, learn to de-stress, because this is a very stressful time. This is, you know, and I think that this weekend is going to help us relieve that pressure, but be smart. Mercury on top of Mars is a malefic aspect together. It's two malefics together. A malefic planet turns Mercury into a malefic planet. So don't, you know, the negative of aspects or extreme harsh fights. This could bring up fights and culmination to fights that just don't need to be reached at that space if you intellectually try and disconnect from ego, but come from a more loving part of your identity or a loving part of yourself. So I'm just putting those warnings out there for this weekend. So it's been a while since I turned to the floor. I'm going to turn live, if you're watching right now, to questions that people might have here real quick. So yeah, here we go. And by the way, on these questions, I don't answer individual signs, personal charts, and stuff like that. I do more about things that everybody can relate with, because it's just, it wouldn't be fair for everyone else. So, is the full moon good or bad? I think this full moon is going to be a great one. I think it's going to be a relief, because you got to remember that in Virgo, we're in an earth sign, and there's going to be some water to drown out these fires of Leo that has been created. And literally there's been fires going on around, especially North America, that I've been seeing. And then how ironic that, yeah, there's been also these intense storms that have been going down in the south and Houston. So even though I think Neptune can offer some relief for the people in the storms, and I think that Neptune is going to offer relief for people in the fires. So it's going to do both. I think this full moon is extremely necessary for all of us, and will offer us a little bit of a moment to relax and chill out. And I don't want to say disconnect, because that's more of a Aquarian thing, but relax a little bit and let a little bit of the tension off, you know? Danny had a good question this weekend. Would it be bad to go out on a hiking adventure and do new activities? I mean, live your life. I've always been somebody who says that. Just be cautious of what you're doing. Think about things through. Like, don't bring one bottle of water and then go on a hike in 120-degree heat. Or if it's 110 degrees outside, don't go hiking. That's, you know, it's just like maybe find another cool adventure that you can do. It doesn't mean limit yourself. It just means think through it all. But I wouldn't stop doing activities or events. I have my brother's bachelor party this weekend out in Nevada in Laughlin. And literally it's going to be like 115 degrees out there. And like, we're going to be on beaches and in boats. And, you know, it's like, I can't avoid this. It's been planned for years. I just got to think thoroughly through and think and prepare, you know. Do I think that the planets being retrograde during the eclipse was to help humanity ease into the changes? It's a very good question, Rebecca. I think that the planets retrograde bring up a lot of karmic events, and especially when you're already dealing with the karma of a solar eclipse. I think that this one brought up a lot of karma people weren't ready for, especially with the trine to Uranus. So It was like unpredictable karma. It was stuff that we weren't expecting to come up with people and circumstances. And, it looks totally different than the way we thought it was going to look. We could feel isolated a little bit with Uranus. That was at the helm of this eclipse and trine. And with all the planets retrograde, so as every planet turns back on, it will help us kind of get back to speed a little bit. But yes, I think it can help humanity ease into changes because it forces us to face karmic issues that we need to, to do. It looks like we did. I think Mercury retrograde cut us off and turned us back on. Is that what happened? Anybody confirm that for me? Or it looks like we're still good. It just looks like we lost a bunch of people out of nowhere. A lot of questions. This is a good technical question from John Russell. What do you see happening when Mars goes sesquiquadrate to Pluto in the next week or two? Well, I think I'm more interested in what Mars is doing with this Mercury retrograde and how it's going to deal with things first. But what's interesting to me with that weird aspect to Pluto is gearing up and getting ready to come direct at the end of September. So Pluto will be extremely stopped. I also think Mars in Virgo as well is going to add to a lot of these situations we've been dealing with right now that Mercury covered. So I would say that Mars from the first 11 degrees of Virgo is going to be intense and the most intense because it's dealing with a lot of these karmic issues and stuff. So I think from September 5th or 3rd, where Mars enters that 28th degree, all the way to the 11th degree where the whole retrograde is more intense. And I think the aspect to Pluto doesn't happen until, I don't think it's as strong as the things that are happening in that position, personally. Yeah, so when I mentioned karma, there's a lot of good karma. And that's what my whole message has been through this video is how much good there is in our life right now. But we are dealing with a lot of also past karma or negative karma that we've got to get through right now, that we've got to push through, and we got to keep our eye on that positivity right now and not get through that dark zone and get through that kind of weird energy that's going around. I still do offer readings. You can email lauren@theleoking.com, but I'm pretty booked up, and I'm all the way booked actually till May of 2018. There might be some dates available in between because I'm taking the holidays off, and I'm taking off the beginning of the year because I'm looking to move. Brittany Andrews asks, do you think it's more important to think logically or follow our hearts at the same time? I believe we can do both. I believe that our heart is what pumps the brain, so we got to listen to our heart first, but let our brain then, formulate, okay, you love this. Is this good or not? And be reasonable. So I think that we can do both. I think that we can have a check on our heart and check it out. But I also think that we can't block it out completely, but we need to be reasonable. Mercury retrograde in Virgo is about being, reasonable. I think that it's bringing up a lot of scientific talk and a lot of over-analysis over situations that can get way too extreme, but also that are important for things that might be on the other side of things with Neptune and Pisces, be delusional. And that's kind of the whole thing. But Neptune's also saying that there are some things that are not understood that come from higher realms that we don't understand fully. So it's kind of a difficult question to answer. I would say that you always follow your heart, but use your mind as your fence to knowing where the boundaries are of how, if it's going to bring you into the right side of the world of the life or the wrong side. So I'm sorry to hear from Tara or Tara, whichever one it is. Is it normal to have anxiety during this time? I feel like I'm stuck in a state of fear, fight or flight, and I'm having a lot of panic attacks. I would definitely say, this is bringing up a lot of what I brought up in the thing that has been going on with the 28th degree of Leo and the fixed signs and a lot of this eclipse energy and this Mercury retrograde. I believe there'll be a lot more relief when the Mercury retrograde's over, but that's something that you should find a way to, and I'm going to take off my astrologer hat here as somebody who went through extreme panic disorder for years and didn't get treated and didn't go see a therapist and get help. Go get the help if you can. You should not put yourself through the difficulty and the stress and the horrible feelings of anxiety and panic attacks. It is not worth it. Go get the help that you need. I hope that you get it. Anyway, looks like, man, there's so many questions I can barely answer. We're so far up. A lot of people having anxiety, so I think that anxiety will give up after this next week. Once the full moon comes, believe it or not, I think that the full moon can offer some support for people. But if you are having a psychological issue, you definitely need to get it fixed or under control or stuff, because it could exacerbate those. Neptune is the ruler of psychological conditions, and especially when you're dealing with Mercury shifting and stuff, at the same time that there's Neptune stuff coming on is when it's the most sensitive of psychological stuff. So as somebody who's been through psychological stuff and learned to treat it and master it, you never can master it, but, at least gotten it to where I can live my life every day without having a panic attack now. And watching the astrology and how it is, holy cow, it could be really difficult. Anyway, I do got to roll. Thanks so much for all the support. I don't want to bring the video too long for people. Self-care is extremely important, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you guys soon. I'm doing my big webinar, so everybody, please check it out, because honestly, this webinar is going to go way into September. I'm going to totally let people understand what's going on. You can register now. It's on Thursday, September 27. Working through the confusion while rearranging it all is what I'm calling it. And of course, if you register, you get to be part of it live, ask me questions, and then of course you get sent the download. So I truly appreciate that. Also, my awesome event, it's coming up. I can't even believe it. So we've got a lot of people that have already signed up. Don't miss out. Come to LA. Come and check out the event. It's going to be all about helping everybody get through this crazy darkness and helping them understand what's coming in the next 2.5 years with Saturn in Capricorn, Jupiter in Scorpio, and how you can utilize that energy to make amazing things happen. Or it can also be very difficult energy to get through. And if you think this is difficult, try a little bit of Scorpio and Capricorn, and it can bring an extremely great or bad taste in your mouth. So, but it's definitely a Jupiter and Scorpio event. Going to talk about Jupiter and Scorpio. We're also going to be doing live channeled readings with everybody in the audience. We're going to be going to Venice Beach on the beach and doing a fire meditation, looking at the stars, teaching people how to understand this stuff, embracing the taboo, and getting people prepared for a lot of this Jupiter stuff. It's also going to be during the time that right after the Sun and Jupiter conjunct. So we've got tickets available now, payment plans available. Honestly, it's extremely cheap, it's extremely affordable, and it's next to LAX. You could literally walk off the plane and walk to the hotel. Literally. You wouldn't even have to rent a car. It's literally on LAX property. Like, literally, you can walk there. So, and we have buses that are going to take people to the beach. So you wouldn't need a car. You wouldn't need to rent a car. So I'm going to be doing some individual face-to-face readings there. I'm going to be doing group readings for the whole entire group on Sunday, so do not miss this event. Anyway, thanks so much for all the support. I truly appreciate it. I will see you guys all later, and wishing you all the best. And if you want to get the Leo King app and watch my videos every day, I definitely advise you on that. Thanks so much, and I will see you later.
The Leo King app is the world's first and leading video and notification astrology horoscope app for iPhone, Android, and computer. Get daily spiritual videos and addictingly accurate notifications alongside weekly sun sign horoscopes, tarot videos, and exciting new age entertainment videos by celebrity astrologer and TV personality David Palmer, the Leo King. Join today. You have nothing to lose with a 7-day free trial and wake up to astrology like you've never seen before.
Wake up to astrology like you've never seen before.